Hello, and welcome to the SharePoint Framework and JavaScript Biweekly Sync. It is February 10th, 2022. I am Patrick Rodgers hosting your call back this week. And we've got a great agenda as always. Latest updates on SharePoint Framework. Oh, those are new. I guess we're doing that now. Patterns and practices updates across the program. New community samples. We'll do our optional picture time with Together mode. Then we got 3 great demos as always from David and Zhao doing document links accordion SPFx Web part. We got Hugo with the new development containers for SPFx samples. And we got Paolo doing Viva Connections, consuming SharePoint Online Data in SPFx Adaptive Card Extensions. So 3 great demos. So let's go ahead and get through the updates so we can get to the demos. Often we get asked, how do I participate more in the Patterns and Practices program or this call specifically or any of our other calls? And the first thing we'd say is definitely we encourage you to reach out and schedule a demo. You're doing great work for your companies or your customers, and we'd love to see you share that with the community. So just reach out to that form there, ak.ms/m365pnp/request/demo, and we'll get you signed up. Just a heads up, we are booked pretty far into the future at this point, but that should not discourage you. Please sign up. We'll get you booked. It just might be a little bit, a little bit till we get to your demo, but we would love to have it. So please reach out on those demos. I will continue to say they are the best part of this call. Contribute to GitHub, all of our repositories, accept your contributions. That, of course, is reporting issues, pull requests, and helping folks with issues and questions they might have. And then as well, we always welcome your feedback on how we're doing with these calls, how we're doing with the rest of the program all up. And so positive feedback is always okay too, as you can let us know, and we might be able to do a little bit more of things you like. This is a whole ton of links. I encourage you to check out ak.ms/m365pnp. That's the main. These slides have really got a lot of stuff on them now. That's the one link you need to get all of the patterns and practices stuff. So our developer videos covering developer related topics, our community videos, which is going to be the recordings of all of our community calls, open source repositories, so SharePoint, PnP, Office Dev, and Microsoft Graph. All welcome your contributions there. As well, we got tons of sample galleries, all of which accessible from ak.ms/m365pnp. And then we've got our call next Tuesday, so that's going to be the 15th of February. That's our Microsoft 365 platform call. So this is a call delivered by Microsoft engineering folks or program management folks about different Microsoft 365 topics. And we'll have Tom, Harshit, and Sebastian using, introducing information protection policy APIs, latest on cloud hybrid search and graph connectors, and then using the MGT Microsoft Graph Toolkit Get component in your solutions, and then possibly some time for some Q&A there at the end. So certainly encourage you all to join that call if you're able, or catch up on the recording at ak.ms/m365pnp, ak.ms/m365/dev-call for the recurrent invite to that Tuesday call. Next up, we've got Sharing is Caring with David.
Thank you, Patrick. Yeah, friends, as you know, Sharing is Caring, or may not know, Sharing is Caring is a program that is here to provide you hands-on guidance from a variety of topics, whether you want to get involved using the resources that you're going to learn all about today, or you want to contribute back, we have you taken care of. We know that there are hurdles that may be in place to doing both of those things, but these sessions are hands-on, safe space opportunities for you to get involved where we will walk you through together in a session. Not recorded, so it's absolutely a great opportunity to ask all kinds of questions, collaborate with members of the Patterns and Practices team, as well as other members in the community. So next week, we've got the Power Platform Samples, first-time contributor, and More Than Code with VS Code. And we also have 2 Ask Me Anythings coming up around PnP React Controls, Graph and MGT, and I believe we're going to be scheduling a session on PnPjs when 3.0 releases. So it's a lot of exciting stuff coming up. Don't hesitate to register, ak.ms/sharing-is-caring. Now, once you do contribute to the community, we want to recognize and celebrate all the amazing things you're doing. So our PnP recognition program is in place now, powered by Credly. Yes, that same Credly that manages and powers all of the certification badges that you get from Microsoft. These community badges are official and will sit right next to those. Attach them to your LinkedIn, share them on Twitter, put them on your website, share them with the world. So we do need you to opt in, ak.ms/m365pnp-recognition, absolutely free. And we're working on sending out a whole bunch of them for what has been contributed in the last month. So be on the lookout for that over the next few days. And thank you all for being amazing. Patrick, back to you.
Thanks, David. I definitely encourage folks, check out those sharing is caring sessions if you're looking for a way to get started or have questions. Those are just fantastic. We've had wonderful feedback from those. So encourage you as much as I can to check those out if you are interested. And now we'll go over to Vesa for SharePoint Framework updates.
Thank you, Patrick. So first of all, just a reminder, if you are an ISV or a partner who's building for Viva or Microsoft Teams, please join us on our Microsoft 365 ISV Benefit program. From here, you can then get benefits like technical support and even money related on your solution. And this applies also, of course, for the solution for Microsoft Viva, which have been built using SharePoint Framework. Some really latest news. So SharePoint Framework 1.4 release candidate is now available. So that was released like 60 minutes ago in the npm, and you can install that by running npm install-g add Microsoft/generator SharePoint at the next, and that will always install the latest beta version or preview version. Now we're looking into going GA with this one within a week or so. So quite fast, unless there's any last-minute massive surprises. Release candidate basically means that, hey, we're ready to go, just final verification. This one is just a kind of a reminder, or let's say sharing some data related on the usage, which is just absolutely insane. Every single week, we are having new records recorded on the SPFx usage in Microsoft 365 worldwide for the custom components being built by customers and partners. And this week's record is all-time record, actually, is Monday, 7th of February. So we're crossing millions and millions of users doing and using the components with SPFx on a daily basis. Quick update on the roadmap slides. Like I said, the 1.14 is intended to go GA in upcoming week, so you can expect that next week unless there's any last-minute surprises or technical challenges, which we will run into in engineering. Other than that, not that much new updates in here. New app catalog experiences coming. We're defining the support and implementation for SPFx in lists and libraries. So this is intended to go as part of the 1.15, of course, because 1.14 is coming next week. And 1.15 beta is then coming out relatively soon. But a lot of innovation. The team is actually getting significantly additional resources and people and funding, which is great because, well, it's being highly successful. But that's a quick update from engineering side. So let's move on the presentation.
Thank you, Vesa, for those updates. We'll now move to Julie with the PnPjs client-side library updates.
I am so happy to do this today because this is a good day. So first, I would like to announce that we are going to be doing the final version 2 release 2.12 on Friday, which is February 11th. And so we will do that release. I say final. If there are any major issues or bugs in the next 3 months, we will do another. But this should be our final version 2 release. And then coming to you on the day of love, February 14th, we will be releasing version 3. And we are super excited, just like Animal. That's exactly what Patrick looked like when we decided to release. So please check that version 3 out. We're going to have all that documentation, all of that stuff released on Monday, sometime probably in the afternoon. You will watch us on the M365 PnPjs Twitter account or the PnP page in LinkedIn. We will announce it there when it has been completed. And certainly if you have feedback or issues on anything that happens with that, please go to our PnP GitHub repo to submit your issues and check out the new updated documentation for a transition guide from version 2 to version 3 there with our documentation link. So that is the big news from PnP client-side library. Back to you, Patrick.
Awesome. Thanks, Julie. And we are very excited about version 3 coming out. So look forward to folks getting their hands on that. Next up is CLI for Microsoft 365. So updates there, new preview version 5 with retrieving planner tasks, retrieving tenant health information, removing users from SharePoint groups, retrieving information about deleted users, and new samples showing how to use the CLI in scripts, as well as a lot of other new improvements. You can always install the preview v5 with npm install-g at pnp/cli-microsoft365 at next. And you got the Docker containers there as well, which is a fantastic way to try things out with all the dependencies and things in a nice contained environment. So if you haven't tried out the CLI, I encourage you to check it out. You can check out the release notes there at that link. Follow them on Twitter, ak.ms/CLI-M365. We'll get you all the documentation and information on how to get started with the CLI for Microsoft 365. Next up, the reusable components. We've got version 3.5.0 is out right now. That's support for SPFx 1.13 and up. Support. So enhancements for multiple controls, updated localizations for German, Norwegian, and Portuguese, as well as some various fixes. You can check out the release notes for all the details. And then as well, the property controls. These are the ones designed to be used in the edit pane of your web parts, are at version 3.3.0. That's, again, SPFx 1.13 support, multiple enhancements for the property field collection data, various other fixes. You can see the release notes at that link for all of the details as well. Thanks, as always, to all the contributors that make these controls possible. They're a fantastic resource for the community. Encourage all of you to check those out to help build your projects and get a jump start on things. Follow them on Twitter. Check out those links there, the github.io/sp-fx-property-controls and sp-dev-fx-controls-react to get all the details on the great reusable SPFX controls. And next up is Modern Search. So ak.ms/PnP-search will get you all the search details about the modern search experience you can build out with flexible web parts. So version 4.5.4 is the February 2022 release. You can see all the details at the link there. Thanks to all the contributors that make this possible. So this is a fantastic set of controls to help build modern search portals right there in SharePoint, and they're super configurable, and you can change how the results look, as well as aggregate sources and all kinds of great features. So definitely check those out. And version 3.23.0, that's the December 2021 release. So if you're still on the version 3 branch, I definitely encourage you to upgrade to the version 4 stuff when you get a chance. I know that's not a thing that can be done just immediately for everybody, but certainly put that on your roadmap and get updated, as the version 3 stuff is still in a maintenance mode for a while. I don't think that's going to be getting a lot of new features. So thanks to everybody making the PnP Modern Search possible. Encourage you to check that out as well. And then finally, SPFx Samples with Hugo.
Awesome, thank you. So we have some repositories where we actually have lots of amazing samples, both on the SPFx extension side and SPFx web parts. These are the updates for the last 2 weeks. On the SPFx extension side, we don't have any new samples or updates. But on the web part side, we have some cool updates. The first one by Kunj Sangani, which is an update to my enhanced Power Apps web part, where Kunj has updated it to SPFx 1.13. We have a new data tables using MUI tables by Jeff and Jacob, a new contributor. We also have auto batching graph calls by Marcin Bourgeois. I had practiced this name, but Marcin, thank you, where we demonstrate how to actually batch graph calls automatically, which is an awesome demo. We also have Takashi Shinohara, who created a new flow button web part, and we have the property pane wrap, which is a really cool concept that Christoph has been working on for a while now. He's had this vision and he's actually made it happen. So it's a really cool way, if you're looking at a creative way to make it easy to embed HTML controls into a property pane without having to wrap your own controls. He's actually done a really cool sample for that. We welcome contributions by everyone, and thank you to everyone who has contributed, even though I may have messed up your name. Thank you. Back to you, David, I guess.
All right, yes, over to me. Thank you. The ACES repository is live and in living color and available for your contributions as well. And we have a new one from Arjit Mandal on monitoring security risk. Now, this is really cool because it utilizes the Identity Protection Graph API. So definitely go check that out. It's going to be processed in the next couple of days. And again, we are open for more contributions. And we promise that this month we will be coming out with a Viva Connection ACES Getting Started Sharing is Caring session that is still on track. So be on the lookout for that. Patrick, back to you.
Thanks, David. And we'll go just right now to the optional picture time. If you'd like, turn on your cameras and Vesa will take over.
Yep, I will take over this, and let me move everybody again on this screen. And let's wait a few more minutes until we fill in the 50 seats. 51st will be in the screen again. Unfortunately, the scene selection doesn't still work for me. I might be running a 2 new dogfooding version of Teams, so that's fine. Few more. We will still have few seats. Dun. Oh, there we go. One more row popping in. Do we get the 50? Oh, there's one more people. Okay, I will start recording in 1, 2, 3. I can see Seb. See on the front. You'll be the example. Everybody can follow Seb's example, and let's do some high-fiving. Everybody, thank you for joining. And there's a Seb dance on the front row. Great, great. We'll follow your example. Thank you, Seb, on that one. Awesome. Thanks, everybody, for joining once again. We'll do a GIF animation on that one, and then let's jump on the demos of the day. Almost on time, which is great.
So first up will be David and Xiao with Document Links Accordion SPFx Web part.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Patrick. Let me just share out here and all right. Well, my name is David Warner, but I am presenting today on behalf of João Mendes. He has created an excellent sample that is going to provide a number of benefits, opportunities, and ways in which we can see how we can utilize a number of resources that are available to us today. And then we want to highlight and really celebrate everyone that's doing the great work. And so João has allowed me to kind of do that for him today. Now, the Document Links Accordion, let's take a quick look at what that looks like. It's going to take information from a library. Obviously, we're looking at documents, and it's going to allow us to group them together by way of either metadata around the list or the library and display it in an interactive way. Now, you may say this looks a lot like list formatting, and that's true, it does. He's actually gone to some great lengths to make it look a little more natural. But there's benefits in this in using the SPFx web parts and the resources that he has decided to use. And so we're going to take a look at that. We can see that we're able to utilize that information so everything gets condensed down nicely. We see that we're able to utilize the iconography to identify. We see the view all there as well. And so let's take a look at what he decided to utilize from a resources perspective. The first thing is the PnP React controls. We saw those mentioned on the call earlier. They are controls that are already pre-built for you, whether it be the presentation layer, as we will see today with the accordion control, or perhaps the property control, which he is also using, but we won't highlight as much today. Pre-built components that are available for you to take advantage of, to not reinvent the wheel, and we'll talk more about that as well. He's also using PnPjs. Now, I know this is near and dear to most of our hearts, and I say most because there are new ones in the community all the time, and once you learn about it, you will absolutely love it. It provides a fluent API to connecting to SharePoint. It allows you to do batching and caching. It is absolutely, bar none, the best way to interact with data. And again, so much effort has been put into these resources for you to take advantage of to accelerate your ability to develop amazing and great things. And that's really what João has showcased today. The simplicity is the magic here around this particular sample. So let's take a look at the demo of how it is used. So we're going to edit our web part. We're going to, edit our page, and we're going to throw the web part, look for the accordion, and throw it onto our page. And this is also, by the way, the configure document links accordion web part. That is also a React control that we'll see that you can take advantage of that kind of lets everyone know when the page loads, hey, something has to happen. You need to go edit the web part to configure it. So they're not just left unknown, not sure what to do next, right? It provides guidance. So we're going to edit that web part. We've got the title there. Then we're able to select the document library that we're going to take advantage of. So I've got media, some books, and some movies stored into a document library. And then we've got all the fields that we can group by. So maybe the most popular to start with is type. So we're going to select type, we're going to apply that, and we're going to see that it now tells us the file type. So we see that there's MP4s, videos, we see that there's PDFs, we see that it's ordered by alphanumeric, and then we see the identification clearly of the iconography that shows that it's closed, not open. There might be a better opportunity because we have extra metadata that we could always use. So I've created a media type that's a little bit more human readable, right? Not everyone's going to know what an MP4 is or a PDF. So I'm going to apply that. And now you see it's a little more self-explanatory. Book, video, right? So now I can understand the groupings a little bit better. So if I expand that, we see that simple experience. And if we look at the information, we see that it still orders by alphanumeric. We've got some amazing stuff here to read. Cooking with Code, Recipes by Chef Hugo, Tales of Heroic Hares, Memoirs Patrick Rodgers. We see our videos, Power Rapping, The Sweet Beats with April Dunham, and of course the Equestrian Expose, the unauthorized story of warrior horses. So you can see it's simple, but it's very powerful in being able to display information rapidly. Also, again, that view all, which kind of gives that sense of, hey, this is going to match the other components that are available to you and that you have access to. We throw it into an emulation of a mobile experience, and we see it works just the same. As we would expect all of our out-of-the-box components to do, this matches that experience as well. And we see back to normal, it looks great, and everything is good. Now, again, the simplicity is the magic here, really. So let's take a look at the code, and we'll see that there's really some basic information here. But what we're going to highlight, we're not going to go too deep into the code, but what we're going to highlight is where he utilized the resources that really make it easy. So we see here he's importing the accessible accordion from the React controls. He's importing the placeholder. And what this allowed Zhao to do is to quickly and rapidly deploy functionality without having to reinvent the wheel, without having to spend a bunch of time, and we'll talk a little bit more on that in a moment, recreating what others have already done. And so you may say, how many lines of code does it take to create something like this when you're able to leverage all of the great work from the community? Well, good thing you asked. 357 lines of code is what was written here. And that's with everything broken out, right? If you were to sort of minify this a little bit, you might have less. So it really exemplifies how you can take advantage of the resources that are available to accelerate. So what are some of the benefits that we gain by utilizing and looking at samples like this? Well, the first is reuse, right? We talked about time being money. Don't reinvent the wheel. These resources have been curated and updated and upgraded and all of that good stuff to make them constantly available for the newest version of SharePoint and the M365 tenancy. So use it. Don't spend your time reinventing that wheel, reinventing that cog when you've got so much available to you. And they're extensible. It's not like you get what you get and you don't throw a fit. All these things are open source, so you're able to extend them if you want. And guess what? Once you've extended them, you can contribute back. So it's a great benefit. Samples like this are also fantastic to learn, right? So what Zhao has provided is he's taken a number of open source resources and tools, PnPjs, React controls, property controls, and he showed how to use them together. And then he didn't just say, oh, I've learned that. Cool. He's actually shared it with everyone else. And so this is a great opportunity to use that and learn from it. The next benefit is you could use this as an accelerator, right? So while it may look like, well, there's not a whole lot going on here, but again, that's the magic, is it gives you a baseline here to create more and add more to it. Perhaps you wanted to add the ability to maybe hover over that and have an adaptive card when you hover over the document and it shows a little preview of it. So part of the work has already been done for you. So these are fantastic opportunities, or excuse me, benefits for you to utilize a lot of these samples that are done, this one specifically by Zhao. What are the opportunities for us then when we think about creating maybe our own samples, matching what Zhao has done? Well, the first opportunity is obviously you're able to share, and we want you to share. You have created great things, and you may even have created something and said, I liked it, I learned from it, but it's so simple, I'm afraid that it might be too simple to share in the community. Please, please, please don't ever think that. What Zhao has created here is a fantastic tool from many perspectives, and we know you have them too. So please don't hesitate to share. Please don't ever think that what you've created is not shareable. Absolutely is, and we encourage you. But as mentioned earlier, we understand that there may be some nervousness around that. Maybe you've not done that yet. Maybe you've not submitted a sample. Maybe you've not worked with GitHub. Well, again, Sharing is Caring is that program we mentioned earlier that provides hands-on sessions and contribution guidance. And we absolutely are going to help you contribute the amazing things that you've created. And then guess what? Once you've created them, you're going to want to share them with the world in sessions like this and presentations like this. But you might be a little nervous about that. So we have the buddy system in place, and you've seen the buddy system in the past where we will team up with you and provide assistance in that presentation, even present with you or for you if you want, because we know that what you're creating is fantastic, just like what Zhao has created is fantastic. So again, please don't hesitate, reach out, get involved. All these URLs are open and available for you. These programs are here for you. We want to encourage you to do more and help you do more, not just tell you, okay, here's how you go do it. Let us know when you've done it. Nope, we want to be there right with you every step of the way. So take advantage, reach out to myself, Hugo, April, any member of the PnP team and the Sharing is Caring team, and we would love to help you. On behalf of myself and Zhao, thank you all again. You can get the code here at the GitHub link, or you can just simply go to aka.ms/SPFx-web parts, and you can learn more about those components. You can also go to React Components and PnPjs to learn more about those tools and resources as well. So thank you all again. Patrick, back to you.
Awesome stuff as always. Thank you, David. And now we'll go over to Hugo for new development containers for SPFx Samples.
Thank you. Let me set up my screen share. And as I'm doing that, I wanted to say my favorite quote is from Blaise Pascal. And it's obviously a quote in French, but it basically says, "I apologize for sending you such a long letter. I didn't have time to write you a short one." And so, while Joao's code is actually short, there's a lot of elegance to it to keep it that clean and succinct. All right, so today we're going to be talking about new development containers for SPFx Samples. This is a crazy concept. I'm going to be going fast. I apologize, because there's probably like an hour and a half's worth of material in here. But let's see what we can do. All right, so if you look at your SPFx or SharePoint Framework development environment, right, there's an article that tells you what you need to do. And one of the first things that we tell you to do is you should install Node, right? And we tell you should install Node 1.14. Now, here's the problem, is every version of the SharePoint Framework, and this is an article that's available on the docs.microsoft.com, but every version of the SharePoint Framework potentially is only compatible with certain versions of Node.js, right? Because obviously Node.js is evolving, and so is the SharePoint Framework. So as you can see here that and this is soon to be obsolete, I guess, as per Vesa's announcement, but the latest version is 1.13.1, right? And it's compatible with Node 12 and 14. But if we look at maybe 1.12.1, it was compatible with 10, 12, and 14. And if we go all the way down to, let's say, version 1.4.1, because maybe you're running on an earlier version of SharePoint, it's only compatible with Node 6 and Node 8. Now, here's the problem, is that we can only install one version of Node at the same time on your workstation. Yes, there's techniques that you can use Node Version Manager or NVM, and if you're interested in that, we have a sharing is caring session where we show you exactly how to do that. David does a great demonstration of how to set it up. But let's go take a look at some of the issues that we're seeing with the SPFx samples and extensions and things like that. Probably for every 10 issues that we see, 9 of them with a plus or minus 1 error margin is actually related to a Node compatibility. So someone is downloading an old version of a SharePoint sample, and these samples have been around for probably like 5 years now. So someone's downloading an old sample that was designed for SharePoint SPFx 1.4.1, and they're trying to run it in like Node, 72 or something, like a super new version of Node, which doesn't even exist right now. And they're reporting issues and of course, there's nothing really that tells you in a friendly way that this is the wrong version of Node. So how do we deal with that, right? If we have all these issues that are being related to Node compatibility. So let's go take a look at what these samples do for us, right? So if we go to an example web part here, which is the enhanced Power App web part, we see if on every README document for every sample has a compatibility section. And they all have the version of SharePoint Framework that it uses, the version of Node that it is compatible with. In this case, it looks like it only works with that version of Node for whatever reason. But new and improved, we now have the ability to actually create remote containers. And a lot of the samples have remote containers. Now you might say, what's a remote container? Well, imagine if I was able to say, I'm going to create a virtual machine that is a separate machine somewhere, that you don't even know where it runs. Like in theory, it runs on your machine, but it could be in the cloud. And it's going to have all the dependencies, all the environment settings, and everything you need to do to actually run this particular sample. But think also about the other scenarios. How many times, well, I'm sure that's never happened to you, but how many times have you been on a project where the new developer joins and it takes them 2 weeks to even get set up with having the ability to build the project because there's so many crazy dependencies and so many undocumented things that happens. Now imagine if you're able to package that entire project, that entire solution into a container that actually is stored with this in source control with or the definition at least, is stored in source control with the solution. And the act of opening that solution in a container opens all the dependencies you need to actually run that solution. Now, that's pretty awesome. And that's not just limited to samples. So let's actually show you how this works. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open that exact same sample in Visual Studio Code. Now, one thing that you'll notice in the corner, when I open the sample, I actually get a prompt. Now, I choose to have that prompt show up for me. You don't have to be prompted every time. But it says, hey, this folder contains a dev container configuration. You can actually reopen this solution in that bubble, in that world that has all the dependencies. And if you click on that, let's see if we can make that happen. If you click on reopen in container, what we should see, let's see if it happened. Now, the other option is if you choose not to get prompted, you can actually just click on the menu or click on that little fancy little thing in the corner and say reopen in container. Either way, what will happen is we'll actually take that same solution and we'll launch it. It will launch Visual Studio Code again, but now it's actually running in a server or in a container that is dedicated for this solution. And for just to be transparent here, I didn't cut any of these videos. I did speed up some of them in some cases because like doing an npm install and watching me do an npm install can be boring. But what you're seeing here is actually it has reopened the solution, but now it's actually coming from a different world. You might even see like the prompt is actually no longer I run on Windows machine. This is not your usual Windows prompt, right? Because it's running in a Linux container. And you can actually see that if you look in the corner here, right here, it says you're editing it on a dev container. We've labeled it as an SPFx 113 container. And so this is actually really cool. Now, just for fun, let's take a look at what happens when I go to my terminal within that container and I just type, if I can actually type, gulp build. Now, I just opened the solution. I didn't do npm install. I didn't do anything like that. I just ran gulp build, and it already builds automatically, and that's cool. And we'll talk about how this works. There's like a lot of voodoo behind this, but it allows you to actually be able to build a solution pretty much instantly from opening it, regardless of the version. Now, think about, for those of you who are actually running, maybe they're still on SharePoint 2016, 2019, or maybe their organization has decided to, due to policies, as per AC's comments, due to policies, they've decided, no, we're not going to go past this version of SPFx for whatever reason, or this version of Node for whatever reason. Now you're about to actually satisfy these kind of requirements by doing this. Now, let's look at the version of Node that's running in this environment. So if I type node-v, right? If I could actually type that is node-v, it'll tell me that it's running version 14.18, sorry. Now, if I actually launched this solution outside the container, and so again, this is going to be confusing, but there's basically the solution can run within the container or something that's called remote, or it can be launched locally, which is really from within my machine only. Let's take a look at what happens. So if I say, let's just close this whole project Let's reopen it. One thing you'll notice is in the recent solutions that show up at the top there, you'll see that it says I have the Enhanced Power App web part as a dev container, and I have the Enhanced Power App as just a regular project. So I'm going to click on that. Now it's actually reopening the solution on my machine locally, right? And you'll notice that my terminal is actually very different. My prompt is very different because it's actually now running PowerShell in my machine. And if I was to type node here, node-v, again, that's a big assumption, assuming that I'm able to actually type node-v. My machine is actually running 12.20.2. So that's kind of cool. Now let's do something a little crazier. Let me actually go to, well, behind the scenes here, I actually replaced the Node version of on my computer to something really old. Now this video is not cut. I just sped up the boring parts, but let's show you the differences here. Right. So again, I'm going to type node-v. This is my local machine. It's running node 4.2.1. So from many, many years ago. And if I do a gulp build on my local machine, I obviously don't have the environment requirements to be able to run this project. And Node will tell me, maybe not so helpfully, that it can't do that. Right now, you need to have a magic decoder ring to actually understand that this is not the right version. But let me reopen that same solution in the container. Again, the container has all the definition of what that solution needs to be able to run with all the dependencies and environment variables and everything. So this is actually opening now in a virtual machine. It's giving me that new fancy prompt. And if I do the same thing, I do a gulp build, or I was going to do node version first, just to demonstrate again that this is running in node 14. Now, if I do a gulp build, what we should see is that it's actually going to build without any dependencies, right? So this is kind of slow and boring, so let's speed that up a little bit. All right, I skipped the whole part here, so you don't have to watch me do this. Now, let's take a look at a little bit more what's happening here. So if I close this window again, and I open a completely different project, a project I've never opened. Well, I mean, in reality, I've opened it because I had to configure it, but I went and deleted all my settings and everything. I reopen a brand new project, and this is going to be the experience you're going to get when you're going to download samples from the sample galleries. You're actually going to get the same thing. It's going to prompt you. Again, it's up to you to decide whether you want to be prompted or not. And then what it's going to do is it's going to switch into the container. It's actually going to provision a container for this machine, as you can see here. And then what it's going to do is we've already pre-configured every sample. Well, okay. The only samples that are published right now are 113, but I have pull requests that I'm going to submit to actually, we're going through 112 and all that stuff. We are testing every sample as we go through this process. But look at what happens. As soon as you open the solution, it automatically sets all the dependencies. It finds out the right version of Node, finds out the dependencies, all the tools that you need to do this. It takes care of that all for you, right? And then what it does is it generates a certificate for your for this machine, because keep in mind, even though you're running this in theory from your local workstation, this is a remote container, right? So it needs its own certificate, and that's normally what you would do if you did gulp trust dev. I can never remember the command, but you know that one, the trust dev certificate. So it's generating the certificate for us, and it's doing that. Now, if we can show you the files on that solution, one thing that you should see eventually, if it's and you can see the videos is sped up by how fast the thing is spinning in the bottom taskbar here. But eventually what should happen is these certificates should actually show up automatically added to a solution. There you go. So we have a CER file for, I guess, Windows and a PEM file for anybody that can't really deal with certificate files. They automatically get generated for you and get added to your project. Now, this is a remote container. So that means that those files are not actually physically being created on your machine. You would have to actually download them and install them on your machine. But if I did a gulp serve here, and of course, this is running in a remote container, so I have to do no browser, because if I did gulp serve, it would try to launch a browser in that machine, and there's no browser installed on that machine because it's a remote thing. So I can actually go to the certificate, go download it on my machine. I downloaded a few versions of this, but I'll go download it on my machine, and then I'll go install it using whatever mechanism for your workstation you would need to do. And then if we speed that up a little bit here, once I've actually, done the gulp serve, eventually I get the fancy reload, which is telling me, hey, now it's time to go refresh my page, right? Let's go take a look at what happens. Now, as it's doing this, one thing that we've configured the machines to do is they will actually open the ports that they need to be able to work on your machine. So it's just going to rebind that remote container's port to your local container. So in this case, in a SPFx 12 or above, you're going to get the manifest and the live reload. If it's an older sample, you have, I believe, 3 ports that get opened because you have also the local workbench that is opened. All right, so let's move forward. If you try to debug the solution on your local machine and you get an error message like this, that's probably because you haven't either installed the certificate to trust your machine, or if you look at the traffic on your machine, you'll actually see, and this would be on your local machine, you'll see that there's like a failed error message in your HTTP traffic because it's trying to get the manifest for your web part. All you really need to do is open that URL in a separate tab, and that depends on the browser, but open it, and then you'll notice it's probably saying something like this, right? Hey, I don't trust that thing, so I'm not going to let it run it. So obviously you need to make sure your certificate that's been created for you is trusted so that you can debug this. And if the demo gods are with me, you should be able to actually see your web part delivered. All right, so I know I'm going fast, but there's a lot of concepts to explain here. So how does this magic happen? Well, the first thing is behind the scenes, these remote containers are done using Docker. So you would have to install Docker desktop on your machine. But again, we'll talk maybe in future sessions about what's the potential for even having some of these containers in the cloud or shared. Just keep in mind, Docker has recently changed their licensing or pricing structure. So you have to make sure that you're following the right pricing. There is a certain charge if you're an enterprise user. But again, that's a Docker thing that I will leave it up to you. But the other component to this magic solution is that there is a extension that's currently in preview for Visual Studio Code that is called Remote Containers. And that's the thing that added that little bar at the bottom that allowed me to go back and forth between containers, local containers, and remote containers. Now, the other thing that you'll notice is the samples that are dev container enabled will actually have a dev container folder and a dev container.json, which actually uses the Docker images that have been created for you. What you'll see is we have in the Docker organization, we now have an M365 PnP/SPFx organization, where we've taken the definition of every single version of SPFx and we've created, this is something that Waldeck has been doing ever since the first version of SharePoint Framework. He's actually been maintaining Docker containers for every single version of SharePoint Framework. So they're pre-configured with the right version of Node and everything. And as you can see, there's quite a few containers here. So what we do is we bind to those containers for you so we don't have to have a copy of a giant virtual machine. And then we have a script that we run at the start of every container to go do all the stuff that we just saw, installing the dependencies, setting up the trust certificates, converting the certificates for Windows and non-Windows devices, and other things like that. All right. Now, if you're wondering, okay, Hugo, that was way too quick. How do I do this? Well, every sample that is container enabled, and soon to be every single sample, in the minimal path to awesome, there is a section that says, hey, if you want to do this sample as a VS Code remote development, go to this URL, right? And it'll actually walk you through the steps on how to set this up. And I think this is kind of what it looks like. Now, again, all this stuff is in preview, right? We're trying to innovate quickly. We don't want perfection be the enemy of innovation. But what's next with this? Well, first thing is all web part samples are going to be not converted, but enabled soon. The one thing that I want to make clear is we are actually testing that every web part works in a container, so that, again, people that are having issues with opening old samples or samples with different versions of Node will be able to do this. We're also going to be extending to the other repositories, the extensions, adaptive cards, and the Teams samples where applicable, because not all Teams samples are going to be suited. All right, so that's it for me for today. I wanted to thank a few people who really helped me with this. Don Kirkham actually jumped in over a weekend to just, I guess I touched a sensitive nerve, and he pretty much dropped everything to help me solve this issue. Gary Trinder, as always, as soon as you mention something that sounds potentially difficult, he just has to do it in like half an hour just to show that, it's not difficult. Waldek, who's actually been supporting all these Docker containers from the inception of SPFx, and Paul Schaeflin, who I think a couple of years ago brought up the idea and opened an issue in the sample repository to say, hey, it would be cool if we could do this. The technology was not quite there yet when we first started talking about it, but now it's available. So to find out more information, you can go read more about Visual Studio Code remote development, because this is not unique to SharePoint Framework. This is something you can use in other contexts. And if you want to read more about how to run these samples in remote containers, you can go to the link that is provided in every README, or you can go to this URL here. That's it for me for today. Thank you for your patience, and have a great day.
Thank you, Hugo, for that. Very great work by everybody to enable those scenarios with the containers. Hopefully that'll help some folks out trying out the samples. So really, really cool to see that coming along. And next up is going to be Paolo with SharePoint Online Data and Viva Connections. Take it away, Paolo.
Thank you, Patrick. I guess you already see my screen, so I will start my demo. So yes, today we are going to talk about how we can consume SharePoint Online Data when developing adaptive card extensions. And whenever we want to do that, we need to keep into account that at the very end, adaptive card extensions are just yet another kind or yet another flavor of SPFx components. So in SPFx and in ACES as well, we can easily use the HTTP client, the SP HTTP client, and the AAD HTTP client in order to consume SharePoint data depending on what we want to do. As well as we can also rely on PnPjs, which generally speaking is my favorite choice whenever we want to consume SharePoint data. And then once we have the data retrieved from SharePoint, we can easily do data binding using the data binding techniques that we have in adaptive card extensions and in the adaptive card syntax, as we already saw a couple of weeks ago in the SIG call of the 27th of January, if you want to go there as well to have a look at how we can do data binding in ACES. So let me switch to my demo environment and let me show you what we can do. Here we have a list just for the sake of making an example. It is a list in Microsoft Lists, but it is actually also a SharePoint list, as we know, because behind the scenes of Microsoft List, there is still Microsoft SharePoint Online. And what I want to show you now is how we can consume the list of items that we have in this issue tracker list from an adaptive card extension, either using native SharePoint support in SPFx or using PnPjs. So the very first example will be this adaptive card in which we can easily see the list of items that we have in this issue tracker list. And we simply retrieve the ID and the title of every single item for the sake of simplicity. So let me show you how you can do that. Well, in my adaptive card extension built with SPFx, I simply configured in the state definition of my component a property called items of type array of item, where every single iList item is just made of an ID and of a title. And then in the properties of my component, I have a target list property, which is a string. Well, inside my component, inside my adaptive card extension, in the onInit method, I can easily rely on a load SPO data function that I defined. And just to avoid blocking the UI and the rendering of my component, I will simply slightly delay by half a second the execution of this method so that I can keep on loading and rendering the whole component before doing the actual data retrieval from SharePoint Online. And then in the load SPO data method, I simply use the context of SPFx because, again, an adaptive card extension is nothing more than SPFx component. So this .context is available like always in SPFx. And .sp HTTP client, I can use this object to make an actual GET request to get, for example, the list of items in a target list configured as the target list title in my ACE. In fact, if I go to edit this item and I click on the pencil, we can see that here we have target list title, which is just issue tracker. That is the name of my target list. So by doing that, we can provide the REST API request to get all of the items of my target list retrieved by title. And then I can simply get the JSON response, and I will have to manually map the result of my query into an actual array of items that I want to store inside my items property in the state of the adaptive card extension component. Once I've done that, for example, in the card view, I can simply say that in the text in the description, property of my card view, I want to say that there are length of the array items in my state, items in the target list, and I can give this kind of user experience. And then I can, in the quick view, provide as the content of the my quick view data the array of list items, which is exported by the other class, by the other TS file, and I can provide the items that I have in the state object of my component as the data source for my data binding. And as such, as we already saw also in the previous SIG call, we can do the binding and we can go through all of the items in the data source of my adaptive card, and we can simply get the ID and the title of every single item. So this is a very simple example to explain you what you can do starting from the basics in order to consume SharePoint Online data. But as we just saw, here we have to do quite some work to build the URL of the API request, to do the actual deserialization of the JSON, and to map the JSON response into the actual array of items. So let me stop this solution. Let me switch to another one that I want to share with you. So first of all, I will do gulp serve no browser here so that I can show you this adaptive card in action. And then I'm going to show you the actual implementation. So again, we have an adaptive card extension here. In the adaptive card extension, almost with the same logic as before, in the state type definition, we have still a couple of properties of type array, where this time I defined a fully typed issue type that I'm importing from this TS file, where I have the title, the priority, and the status of every single issue in my issue tracker list. Then I have the all issues and the new issues in my state, as well as I have the issue list title property in the properties of my component. So like before, we start in the onInit method, we set up with PnPjs the context. So using the SP object that we have in PnPjs, which is a package that you will have to import in your solution, we simply set up PnPjs to work with the context of SharePoint Framework in our component. And then again, with a set timeout of a half second, we will load all of the issues. In order to load the issues, we rely on a service that I defined. The service is called issue service. And here you can see we have an instance pre-created inside this TS file. And the issue service will simply provide a get issues and get issues by status methods. The first one will simply give me back the list, actually an array of issues based on the name of the list. And the other one will also filter the issues by status. So here you can see the implementation of the methods, and I can use the Fluent API of PnPjs. So I can say sp.web.lists. I will get my list by title, and PnPjs will build the actual REST query for me. I want to select these properties of every single item, and I want to get all of the items. Of course, here I have just a small amount of items, so I can do that. Otherwise, you could do paging and stuff like that. And once I've got my list of SPO issue items, which is defined as an interface right here, I can map them to the actual output that I want as the data binding source for my solution. And the same applies for the get issues by status, but here I'm going to use a camel query to filter the items. So here you can see again sp.web.list. So through PnPjs, I'm getting the target list reference, and then I make a query with camel. Here you can see the actual camel, and this is the readable version of the camel that I'm running. So I'm retrieving these fields, and I'm making a query based on the status, filtering based on the status value that I get as an input argument. And then again, I do the filtering. Cool. So now in my load issues, I can get through my service the two sets of issues, the whole issues and the new issues, and I can again do the binding, setting them into the state. Moreover, I can also keep an eye on the onProperty pane field change method, so that in case the title list will change, I will be able to update the list of items. So now it is running. Let me go to edit and let me remove this item, and I will briefly add the new one just to show you the output. So here we are. Consume SPO ACE. Here I can go here and say that the list is issue tracker. Thanks, SharePoint, for helping me. And now we have our adaptive card extension with the card view rendering the number of new issues that I have, which is actually the number of items with new right here. And then we can see all of the issues with the status and with the priority. So really easy and simple. And again, here we are just doing the data binding using the capabilities of adaptive card syntax. And here we bind all of the issues in this view and getting the status or the title or the priority of every single issue. So really simple and quick, but really powerful. And I think that's all for me as well. So back to you, Patrick, and thank you.
Thank you, Paolo, for that. That's another great example of data binding for your ACEs. Really fits into a lot of what we've been talking about in the other calls about making dynamic adaptive card extensions and pulling data from different sources. So great to see that. Thank you, Paolo. Thank you, Hugo, for the fantastic overview of new development containers. And thank you, David and Xiao, for the document links accordion SPFx Web part. Great stuff. Very much appreciate everybody's work on those demos and coming to present them today. Again, if you are interested in demoing, please submit to the form with the link earlier in the recording. This recording will be available in 24 hours on the YouTube channel, ak.ms/m365pnp/videos. Just a reminder, we cannot make the actual Teams recordings public to everybody, so you'll get those recordings from the YouTube channel. Follow us on Twitter at Microsoft 365 Dev or at M365PNP. Our next Viva Connections and SPFx call will be in 2 weeks on February 24th at the same time. And our next General Dev SIG call will be next Thursday, February 17th at the same time. You can get all the links from our community call invites at ak.ms/m365pnp. And again, lots of other community calls as well. Certainly encourage you to attend or catch up on YouTube as many of these as you can. And with that, I'll say thank you to everybody for joining us today. Thank you, everybody, for presenting, and look forward to talking to you all soon. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye.